LGBTIQ people and all of our allies, I want to wish you all a great and human rights friendly Helsinki Pride Week. My name is Matti Pihlajamaa, and I am currently acting as the chair of Seta's International Affairs Committee. We're a group of voluntary activists, experts, and researchers who are all passionate for defending LGBTIQ rights globally. I have the privilege to warmly welcome you all to this discussion, focusing on LGBTIQ rights defenders in Europe, organized jointly with Seta's International Affairs Committee, Seta staff members, and all the outstanding activists who are present here today. This year, Helsinki Pride calls us all to be icons who lead the path to a world that is equal and has space for everybody. Right now, this call is urgent, not only in Helsinki, but in all over Europe and globally. We're living amid a global pandemic, and the outcomes are not the same for everybody. We have witnessed limitations to the access to LGBTIQ-specific healthcare and support services. Hate against LGBTIQ persons is on the rise, and neoconservative regimes have tried to take advantage of the state of exception. Moreover, the pandemic reveals the multiple inequalities in our societies. Incidents of racism have increased, and for many persons with low income, social distancing is an impossible luxury. Some of us also experience not one, but many of these inequalities at the same time. Even during these exceptional times, LGBTIQ activists refuse to give in. As we have seen, Pride events and support groups have been moved online. Activists are mobilizing themselves by using new technology or marching on the streets with safety measures to demand states to respect our rights. As a person who usually sees the glass half full, I think that online events like the one we're having today can even bring activists from different contexts together more easily and more often than in a pre-corona world. I want to believe that solidarity between activists is not decreasing, but it actually keeps getting stronger. Dear LGBTIQ people and our allies, we're all icons, and it is up to us to decide what kind. To be icons for LGBTIQ rights, European states and the EU need to step up and change the current course of action. Based on ILGA Europe's Rainbow Index, we know that positive legal development regarding LGBTIQ rights is slowing down. Compared to last year, there has been no positive change in almost half the European countries, and many countries are actually moving backwards as existing protections are disappearing. Also, recent survey by EU Fundamental Rights Agency shows little, if any, progress to LGBTIQ equality during the past 7 years. Current opposition to LGBTIQ rights is a part of a wider pattern. Besides LGBTIQ rights, the so-called anti-gender movements are opposing the right to abortion, comprehensive sexuality education, and many other gender equality policies. Core values of democratic societies are being attacked against by rhetorically framing them as gender ideology. Similar hateful discourses circulate around Europe and the world, including Finland. Even during Helsinki Pride Week, we have once again had to remind that we, LGBTIQ persons, are not an ideology, but human beings who exist and have the equal rights, just like anyone else. Our discussion today aims to find out how we should move forward from here. What can local governments, the EU, and each of us do to defend the rights of LGBTIQ people? And how can we support each other and the other movements pursuing for social justice? We will be discussing these questions with 6 inspiring icons from across Europe. These decision makers and LGBTIQ activists will share us perspectives that hopefully make it easier for us to get a deeper understanding of what Europe looks like for LGBTIQ people today. I am also sure that their experiences will inspire each and every one of us to stand up for LGBTIQ rights. So, let me introduce you our fabulous panelists. And dear panelists, I would also like if you can open the videos when I'm introducing you. First, Silvia Modig. She is a Finnish member of the European Parliament, where she belongs to the European United Left, Nordic Green Left group. She is also a member of the European Parliament's LGBTI intergroup. Silvia is a former member of the Finnish Parliament and one of the first openly LGBTIQ members of the Parliament in Finland. And second, Nitin Sod. Nitin describes himself as an eternal idealist. He is a human rights advocate and a co-founder of feminist and anti-racist NGO called FemR, which aims to increase the voices of racialized people in the Finnish society. And third, we have Tiina Kolos-Orban. They have been active in the LGBTIQ movement since 2005. They are responsible for international relations and advocacy at an NGO called Trans Vanilla, which is the only registered organization focusing on trans rights in Hungary. Tiina Kolos has also been serving in boards of different regional and global trans organizations. And fourth, Yuri Yorski. He is a board member of IGLIO, and the acronym stands for the International LGBTIQ Youth and Student Organization. He has been involved in LGBTIQ activism for more than 8 years, starting in Ukraine and now working internationally. And last but not least, Aili Kala. Aili is a human rights lawyer who works as an advocacy expert and legal advisor at the Estonian LGBT Association. She not only works with policymakers and NGOs, but also provides legal aid to LGBTIQ people and their loved ones. And before the panel discussion, we will also hear how Finland responds to Helsinki Pride's call to be an icon. I have the privilege to announce that today this call will be responded by Johanna Sumuvuori, who serves as State Secretary to the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Pekka Haavisto. Her responsibilities include assisting the Foreign Minister in matters relating to political guidance, as well as deputizing the Minister in international meetings. So, please welcome State Secretary Johanna Sumuvuori. The floor or the virtual platform is now yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to this occasion. So I hope you hear me. I'm here at my office at the Government Palace. And dear friends, I would like to wish you good afternoon. And also, I'm addressing you on behalf of the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Finland and Mr. Pekka Haavisto, the Foreign Minister of Finland. It is a very great pleasure for me to address this virtual audience today during the Helsinki Pride Week, which is one of the biggest human rights events in Finland. Human rights have a central place in Finland's foreign policy. It's firmly stated in our government program. And according to the government program, our policy is human rights based, and our aim is to have human rights taken into account in all sectors of our work, in foreign and security policy, development, trade, etc. For Finland, it has traditionally been important to pay attention to those persons and groups who are at greater risk of being discriminated against or left behind. And our aim is to give voice to those who far too often remain unheard at various international fora. This is also the reason why we seek to be member of the UN Human Rights Council for the term 22-24. The election takes place next year, and these questions we are talking today are also addressed in our campaign. The membership of the Council would allow us to even more actively participate and take responsibility on bringing human rights issues to global attention. It goes without saying that LGBTIQ persons often are in their countries among the people who are at risk. And this is not only the case in developing countries, but a fact also in developed European countries like Finland. Here as well, reports tell about marginalization and discrimination in many sectors of the society, including education, employment, and healthcare. But in many places, the situation is much worse. This is unfortunately the case in some European and even EU member states. LGBTIQ persons are harassed physically and in virtual platforms. Hate crimes are a daily threat for many people. Far too many people lose their lives because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. In the worst situation are often persons who belong to many minorities at the same time. This is not acceptable. We must step up our joint efforts to support rainbow persons and rights at European and global levels. This is even more important now than we are facing a global crisis that has intensified inequalities and has already had severe impacts for those that were already in challenging situations. For example, lockdowns have increased domestic and gender-based violence, and unfortunately, home is not a safe place for everyone. So this should be kept in mind when deciding on restrictions all around the world. Dear friends, let me be very clear. Finland is strongly committed to promoting LGBTIQ rights as part of its foreign policy. During the past years, we have given substantial financial support, for example, to the work of ILGA and the Global Equality Fund. We are also among the supporters of the UN Independent Expert on Protection Against Violence and Discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. Independent expert Mr. Madrigal has done an excellent job in the past years to increase awareness on the violence and discrimination against LGBTIQ persons globally. Together with our governmental and non-governmental allies, we need to continue to find effective ways to support LGBTIQ rights also within international organizations such as the UN, Council of Europe, and the OSCE. This might often be quite challenging, but will not stop from us being active in these questions. So we will continue to use all methods available, political and financial, to support LGBTIQ rights also in the coming years. Dear friends, we would not be able to do our jobs well without close cooperation and coordination with our civil society partners, human rights defenders, and activists on the ground. We welcome and rely on your reports from the grassroots level. We need your knowledge and expertise in order to have sustainable and targeted solutions in each situation. So I would like to end by giving my sincere thanks to all of you for your efforts to advance human rights protection of all LGBTIQ persons around the globe. Our door is always open to you, and I hope that you have a wonderful Helsinki Pride weekend in Helsinki. Thank you very much. Greetings from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Finland.
Thank you, Johanna Sumuvuori, and thank you, Matti, for starting this event. Your speech was something that really moved me, and I'm really honored to be moderating this discussion. So I'm a member of Seta's International Affairs Committee. I love the work because the world is something that we make it to be. At this point, I must say that it's not close to the world that I would like to see my child to grow. And I know that you all do this kind of work, that we try to change things. We try to make this to place for everyone, that everyone can feel right kind of and respected. And sometimes this work is really hard when you have to defend yourself every time. It's not like you talk about subject far away, but your own personality and your own right to be. And that is really hard. And I honor all of you so much. And now I would like to ask you some questions, and because we have quite many questions, we made this together with our international committee, the questions, and we had so much things we would love to hear. I cannot ask every question from everybody, so I always address from which I'm asking the question. I hope it's okay, because I must say that this panel should be like 3 hours long if I could, or I have honor to ask all the questions from everybody. But first of all, I would love to know, or we would love to know, what is the situation where you come from right now? What is the situation of LGBTIQ rights in your country? Could you please, Aili, you are from Estonia. Could you please describe the situation in Estonia at the moment?
Yes, thank you, Elina. Well, I can maybe summarize that over the past years, developments of the LGBT plus persons' rights has mainly stopped. Legislative power has not adopted any strategies considering LGBT plus community or the European Union proposals in the area. Unfortunately, no laws on eliminating of discrimination and equal treatment of LGBT plus community were not adopted in recent years, nor were existing shortcomings eliminated. But on the other hand, some of the infringements have been remedied by judgments of the Supreme Court and the courts of lower levels. And again, unfortunately, the political climate regarding LGBT plus persons and their rights has become more hostile in statements and actions. But however, the attitude of Estonia's residents towards LGBT plus persons and the necessity of the Registered Partnership Act has improved.
So there's bad news and good news.
Yes, you can say that.
Yeah. So what about Yuri? What kind of situation you find yourself in daily basis?
Hi again. So I am based the same as Aili in Estonia, but I work internationally. So as a part of IGLO, from International Youth and Students LGBT organization, I might say that the situation is crucial, and we might see that youth as a vulnerable part of LGBTQI group in general is always like left behind, and that's what like IGLO is paying attention to. And as far as we can see, now we are working closely with the Finnish government to make the educational system all-inclusive and have a comprehensive anti-discrimination system related to LGBTQI youth in schools and youth environments. However, this is not the general rule for all the countries across the Europe. So I think this should be taken into account. Talking about my other part of work, where I'm working with Eastern Europe and Central Asia, I do see that situation got worsening within the COVID times, and that what we can see that like in Ukraine, there have been cases when the LGBTQI group was used by the religion movements as the group that might cause the COVID. So like there was some like fake judgment to find the LGBTQI people as the reason for COVID to appear. There were the cases to discriminate LGBTQI people, and there are still in Russia, where the government was taking the COVID time as the time when there is no possibility for freedom for peaceful assembly, to actually got discriminated our community even more. There was a state-sponsored homophobia video advertisement during the proposed changes for the constitution in the Russia. So we see many cases rolling around to not opening the spectrum of LGBTQI rights in Europe and beyond, but rather to shrink this civil society space where I do find LGBTQI people as the most vulnerable in this case.
Thank you, Yuri. We have actually heard many reports from all over the world that LGBTIQ persons are accused of COVID. For example, in Uganda, there was some people arrested because of they are gay and because they are spreading COVID. That is totally, of course, you know, it's only like hate speech and hate actions. But what about Tina? You are based in Hungary. Could you please describe what kind of the media coverage is? If you think about LGBTIQ people and their rights, how is media treating us? Sorry, I cannot hear you.
I'm sorry, I was muted, and I forgot. Okay, so hello everyone, and thanks for the question, Elina. The media is it's kind of interesting how it functions in Hungary. A huge part of it are basically controlled by governmental forces, and there is very few media outlets left who are kind of independent and are not promoting state propaganda anymore. And the covering of LGBT issues is mostly about non-covering issues. And basically, the Hungarian situation of LGBT people is just literally not reflected in the media because the population is not really supported by the government, and it's rather open and is something that we are all aware of. And when we are discussed in the media, that's usually with negative connotations and enforcing stereotypes around LGBT issues, mixing up terms and the different parts of our communities. So that is really not helpful in promoting the rights of LGBT people. And the constant attacks on civil society obviously are kind of reflected in the media outlets. So what I can say is that the space has shrinked for what is kind of presented in the media, and oftentimes the stories are absolutely imported from other parts of the world and absolutely are not in context and in line with what is actually happening in Hungary. And the civil society and LGBT people who would like to engage with media, it's very hard for them with huge parts of the media, obviously. And their stories are only covered in those kind of media outlets who are kind of independent and try to cover issues. But it's very difficult and limited what can be reached in ways that are really promoting the rights of LGBT people in the country.
It is so sad to hear the situation in Hungary is hard, and we really appreciate your work there. I would like to ask from our Member of Parliament, Silvia. You are an openly gay Member of Parliament, and I would like to know that what is your daily work? Do you get any? Does it like mean anything to people, or can you be yourself everywhere? Do you have to suffer from hate speech, or is it absent from European Parliament?
Well, thank you, Elina. And first of all, lovely to be here. Thank you for the possibility to hear all these thoughts and experiences from all around Europe. Listening to you, my friends, I find that we in Finland are in a quite good place, even if we have work to do. And when I was elected to the European Parliament, in many ways, it felt like I was going back in time. In my country, we now have, for example, in legislation, we have equal marriage law, meaning same-sex marriage, but we like to call it equal marriage law. But still, our trans law, for example, is a human right violation. But we have made so much progress that the way we talk about these issues has become more respectful. It's not good, but it's much more better than it used to be. And so, starting work in the European Parliament, I was shocked. I was shocked about the comments I could get. I've been compared to a pedophile. I've been accused of promoting pedophilia. I've been accused of endangering all children. And I've been told that a woman's place is at home and not shouting these rainbow things in the parliament. So there are voices that are very dark, but they are not all the voices. It's very important always to remember that it's a small minority, but they are so loud. And it's really important to understand that a lot of people support us and a lot of people are with us. And I usually, when I feel scared or threatened by these speeches, I try to imagine in my head all the people who voted for me, all of them who thought that I'm okay, that I'm trustworthy. They want to give their only vote they have to me to have this job and this mandate. I try to think of them in a line standing. So I get the vision in my head that there are so many who stand behind me in this, that I am not alone. But at the same time as we have in the European Parliament strong opposition to LGBT rights, we have strong forces working for them. And the good news is that the forces working for us are getting bigger.
Thank you, Sylvia. And I must say that I voted for you. Nitin, you are working in some Finnish NGO. Could you describe your NGO?
Hey everyone, I hope you can hear me and see me. First of all, I just want to say thanks. It's great to be part of this panel with amazing co-speakers, co-panelists, and happy Pride to everyone. About the NGO, I'm not working for the NGO, so the NGO is... I represent it, and it's a voluntary-based NGO, so we don't have any employers in the NGO yet. But as Matti introduced in the beginning, FemR was it's a new organization that was founded 2 years ago on a day of against racism. And the purpose of the NGOs, it's an NGO for people of color, for racialized people. And the point of the NGO is to increase the voices of racialized people in a feminist, intersectional, and anti-racist way. And one of the reasons and one of the works that we do is working with LGBTI people of color and making sure, because even though the situation in Finland is getting improved, but there's a tendency, for example, in Finland and in other parts of Europe as well, that, for example, far-right parties who are usually racist as well and anti-immigration, they tend to use gay rights, LGBTQI rights as a scapegoat, saying like, we don't want Muslims or refugees to come into the country because they don't accept LGBTQI people. So using kind of in a way, excusing their racism with saying that we promote LGBTQI rights and that's why we don't want. And so our NGO is trying to be intersectional in that way, bringing forward the fact that there are actually LGBTQI people within people of color. There are Muslims who are LGBTQIQ, Black people, and this is something that's largely forgotten, I think, in a mainstream discussion. So that's one of the things that our NGO does.
So how does it look like from your perspective, the situation and rights of LGBTIQ persons with different backgrounds, like with disabilities or different like colors or whatever?
I think it's an excellent question. I'm really happy that's brought up because, as I mentioned, there's a serious lack of representation of LGBTQI people with disabilities or of color. Today I was really happy because in the newspapers in Helsinki or in Finland, there was a big article on a minority within minority. So there is a slowly getting more visibility for these issues. But I think there's also, we have to face the fact that there's still quite a bit of racism within the LGBTQI organizations or like within the LGBTI communities. I mean, if you look at, for example, dating life and Grindr, where, for example, gay men, there's often comments saying on the descriptions that they don't want to be with curries or Black people, or there's there's a lot of work to do within our community as well, but also at society at large to recognize the diversity and the multiple identities within LGBTI people. And also with the LGBTI people with disabilities, I mean, that's a really big topic because generally speaking, disabled people are often labeled as non-sexual or like, and especially I think one of the biggest concerns with them is the right to sexual and reproductive health rights. So just acknowledging the fact as well that disabled people have also, their sexual desires and not treating as a taboo as well. I mean, that's a big issue within the disability, or like how us, I think, able people look at disabled people. But yeah, I think that hopefully answered a bit.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you, Nitin. And I must add that one of my friends uses wheelchair, and when she was in high school, they had sex ed class, and the teachers told her that you can leave from the class because you are disabled. You don't need sex ed.
Exactly.
And that's what you are saying. And that was in Finland a few years back. So
yes,
we are still living with all these stereotypes that we have to just fight.
Definitely.
So I would like to now hear some successes. Tina, could you please tell some success stories what you NGO or you as an activist have been achieving?
Oh, thank you for this amazing question. I think success is something that happens and we have to celebrate, although sometimes, and for us at Transvanilla, oftentimes nowadays, we cannot really list our successes or pay attention to them. I mean, trans rights were so much under attack in our country, and we are facing so severe situation that I would say that the very existence of my organization and my personal well-being as an activist is already a success, that I can survive things and we can survive together and we can find tactics to cope with situations. I could say many things that were kind of small successes, but I mean, during these days I cannot mention anything else, because staying alive and being able to continue the fight that is like, really, I wouldn't say the glass is half. I would say the glass is almost empty for us, but we can still find lemon and hopefully we can collect some water, and having hope and being able to build that up in our life and as activists and as trans people in Hungary. I think that's the biggest success that I can mention.
Thank you. And this is the question I would like to Yuri and Aili to answer as well, because it's inspiring to hear these success stories.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Elina. Should I go first?
Yeah, please.
I can say that over the years of the active advocacy work, we have found a lot of allies. We have created effective cooperations, but of course, much work needs to be done here. And the good thing is that the network of partners helps us to do it more effectively. This year, for example, we developed as an association a Rainbow Hero Badge, and it is meant for honoring community and allies, and we have awarded several activists and allies with it. And it's great to say that our president of Estonia was among of them. So it was huge honor that we could present her with it at her reception. So it's a huge step forward for us in recognizing us as a association here in Estonia. Most recent success would be that we have carried out a school study that surveyed school climate. And that was the first LGBT plus oriented school survey in Estonia so far. So after that, an educational themed conference was organized by us, and it followed with an educational project carried by us. So it's right now an ongoing process. And
congratulations, these both are so huge. Please continue, we want to hear everything.
No, I'm wrapping up. Just wanted to say that the first time we have the resources to put together a broad-based selection of peer-to-peer counselors. So they could have the proper official training in order to counsel our community members on our organization's behalf. So yeah, that's pretty much the last year's achievements right now.
Oh, that's not little achievements. Congratulations, Aili.
Thank you, Aili, and I think I will follow up on this. That's great what Aili mentioned, this program to work with youth. I do believe for IGLO it was really important for Youth and Students Association of LGBTQI that we've been working for some years already on the assessments of educational environment, how sensitive and inclusive it for LGBTQI youth. And in this case, there have been like few studies done, and we've seen that there are still some big gaps in the countries of European Union that we need to work with. And I do believe that it's a huge success that we have the willing governments who are ready to work with us as the civil society organization and the community representatives, so that not any voice would not be left behind, that everyone would be heard. And like for the last years, we have these cooperation programs with the Finnish government, as I mentioned, and also with Andorra government. And I do believe we will have like more cooperations in the future, so that we can make the school environment more inclusive and more sensitive for LGBTQI youth and students. On other hand, I want to add additional success, which I do believe is important, and we need to praise each other, each and every one of us, is that in Eastern Europe, I do believe not only, but from my experience, that we always have some issues related to mobilization of the community, and how do we stand together and how do we support each other. And in this case, I do find incredibly beautiful that like communities in Ukraine, Russia, Moldova, Georgia in this case, and Southern Caucasus, which are parts of the Council of Europe, that they can they mobilize, they stand together, and it's not like separate lesbian movement, gay movement, trans people movement, or intersex movement. It's like the all group together, we are fighting together for our rights. And I don't want to use the negative word fight. I want to use the word which can be described as marching together, or vocalizing about us together, where we can show to the our citizens and our friends that we exist, that we are all together, and we are ready to be visible and present more and more. So I think it's great that when we can unite as a movement all together. Yeah.
That was so inspiring. And moreover, I was thinking about this cooperation thing. Tina and Aili, do you cooperate with other NGOs and with other regions? Do you have this kind of experience that, Yuri, that you have been able to unite?
Should I go? I can say that our biggest cooperations with NGOs is among Latvia and Lithuania. It's a Baltic region cooperation. We organize together a Baltic Pride event. So every year it's carried out in a different country. Unfortunately, this year, due to a pandemic, we decided not to do that. It was Estonia's turn to organize it, and that I hope that next year the Latvia could take it over with more stronger power. And of course, our Nordic friends and neighbors, Finland and Sweden, have been really great friends for us concerning the sharing of knowledge and experiences and how to bring our development even more further. So I really thank everybody on behalf of our organization.
Thank you, Aili. Do you, Tina, does your organization has cooperation with other NGOs in your region or internationally?
Yes, absolutely. It's very important for us to be connected to others, also in the region and also inside Hungary. So internationally, we are members of Transgender Europe and ILGA Europe, and we try to actively engage with other trans rights organizations and also LGBT rights organizations in the region. We are definitely more active when it comes to trans organizations. And in Central Eastern Europe, we have even more connection to these organizations. And in the country, we also actively engage with NGOs working in other fields, mainly with organizations focusing on housing issues, poverty issues, sex worker rights. And we try to widen this as much as possible and to kind of network together, to not just join the LGBT letters together, but I believe, and we strongly believe, that the whole human rights movement should be one movement, and we should fight for a world free from discrimination. And that is impossible if we don't talk to each other. So we really try to reach out to as many other NGOs as possible.
That's so clear and so true message that human rights are for everyone, and we shouldn't sort of like separate social problems or people from each other. I think that's so important for us to remember as well, that we should work more with poverty movements and different kind of movements. What about Silvia? Do you have any allies or networks in European Parliament where you can advance this human rights agenda?
Well, we have the LGBT intergroup, which is really good because it has parliamentarians from, I think, most of the countries presented in the European Parliament and almost all the groups presented in the European Parliament. So I think that is a really good basis. And I think it's very valuable in the context that we come all from different political backgrounds. You have the right wing and the left wing working together. And I think that is so important because then it won't be thought of like this is a left thing or this is the right thing or this is this party, so this political agendas thing. So that's why I find that really, really important. But what we have tried to do in my group and my colleague Malin Björk, who is a Swedish MEP, and she's been really active for years in this. What we have tried to do is invite activists into the parliament and try to organize meetings with whomever would be good for them to meet so that they can present their own cause. Because I don't believe in me being really privileged in this position and really privileged in many ways that I could from above some kind of like organized stuff. You have to give the platform and the voice to the people who it concerns. So that's what we've been trying to do. And listening to you, my friends, of all your experiences, I feel so humbled and so privileged and so moved about the situations that you all are in. And I just want to use this opportunity to say that please be in contact with me if you feel there is anything that I could help with, if there is anything that I could from my position be of any assistance. If you feel that, please be in contact. But I also, as a politician, have always felt that it's really, really important to have good contact with the NGOs, because that's my background. I came from the NGO world to the party political world. So I think that is a really important way to keep in contact with the civil society, because you cannot have a conversation with each citizen directly. So the NGOs are a really good platform to connect with more people and for more people to be able to connect with the decision makers. So I think that is like the basic ground from where you have to do politics, at least from my perspective.
Thank you. And remember everyone to contact Silvia if you need anything from European Parliament. One wise woman once told me when I was just admiring her achievements, she is an older one and I really respect her human rights work. And I was telling that you are so like, you have so much power within you. How did you get all this power to change the world so radically? And she said, like, look, Elina, I haven't done nothing myself. I have every single thing I've done together with other people, with like So this is, we need each other in order to change the world, to be a better place, to be the place for everyone. We really need each other, and we need our NGOs to work together, like you all emphasized. Nitin, I would like to hear, like, does your what kind of other NGOs does yours work with, and do you tackle any other human rights problems than discrimination of LGBTIQ people?
So FemR, as I said in the beginning, we are intersectional organization, which obviously means that we need to take into account the different forms of identities that people have and different forms of discrimination that people encounter. And that's for that reason, I mean, I think it's very valuable for us to work within with different NGOs, as someone said beforehand as well, like with disabled organizations as well, with LGBT organizations, with anti-racist organizations, with feminist organizations, with women's organizations. And in our work, we always try to, not always succeeding, but always trying to take into perspectives from different perspectives. So when we are, for example, organizing events as well, it's really important to look at accessibility. And I don't mean by accessibility only social, like safer spaces, social attitudes and social accessibility, but also physical accessibility. So if you're organizing an event, you're making sure that if someone is in a wheelchair, they can access the place. Or if you're organizing an event, you try to make sure that there's an interpreter for sign language. And it's not always possible with limited resources, obviously, but at least reflecting always who is here, who is able to come to our events. And I mean, there's also always the issue that we, for example, acknowledge in our NGO that our NGO is voluntary based, obviously, and most of our events are also just in Helsinki, or what we do is in Helsinki, in the capital region. And Finland is a humongous country, and there are people of color all over Finland, but we are not able to, for example, provide support or help for them. But acknowledging in a way our own privileges in our work. I know we are actively working to dismantle the discriminatory structures, but at the same time, I think we have certain kind of privileges that we need to take into account in our work and critically always reflect on them and think. It's always, I think, making the world a better place. I always, in my opinion, I always feel it's a process. It's never, I don't think it's a goal that you go to and then the world is, ready, but it's a continuous process and you need to always strive to make it better. And
yeah. Thank you. Tina, I would like to ask you now some more serious types of question about Hungary. Is it dangerous to be LGBTIQ person there openly? Do you get hate mail, hate speech? Do you feel threatened to be as an activist in Hungary?
Thank you for the question. At the moment, me as an activist and I as an open trans person, I feel safe in the country. And I mean, that's a great privilege for me. That's not true for all people in our communities. That is not true for all lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender people in the country, obviously. Those who are visible and mostly trans women who are visible, they have their kind of own techniques on how to stay safe. I don't have to do such things, but as I said, I'm privileged and fortunately, not to my great surprise, but still I don't get kind of attacks or any kind of harassment line. Even our organization is not getting that. There are LGBT organizations who are more visible. They are mostly picked by those who spread hate, even online. So at the moment, we are kind of safe, but I mean, that comes with a price. We have never been an NGO that really wanted to be very visible. We had different strategies before we faced the challenges with the law amendment banning legal gender recognition. We use the same thing as what I see. We avoided dangerous situations. That is a tactic you can use, and I can say that I am safe, but I know how I am kind of type of thing. I try to stay safe, and sometimes I pay the price for that.
Yeah, I'm so happy to hear that you feel safe, but I still am saddened to hear this self-censorship, if you can call it that, because I think it's actually human right to be visible as you are.
I totally agree, and I can tell you that I had times when organizations providing emergency grants to NGOs approached us, and I was like, why do you come to us? I couldn't imagine I would need them. And half a year after that, when our community center was visited far-right extremists, had to reach out to them. It became reality that what they have offered that we really need of. So I feel safe, but I don't know when it will change. And because right now I can imagine anything, and I have plan Z to leave the country if I need. So with all this said, I'm kind of getting prepared for whatever is coming next. And that's maybe that means that I don't feel safe. I don't know. I try to be strong and then say that I feel safe, but I'm kind of a little bit confused nowadays on whether this safety is real or not, or will end in the near future.
We will all hope that you stay safe. Silvia, we were thinking in our committee that there has been some good resolutions in EU about LGBTIQ rights, but why do the violations still happen? Why do they increase? Why is the hate speech still here? Can European Union do something, or European Parliament?
Oh, Elina, if I had the answer to why it increases, I would wish I would have. Yes, I think that the Parliament has had good positions, and I think the Parliament has had bravery to take positions in these questions, because you need quite a lot of support even to get something into the parliamentary plenary to be discussed. The European Union is doing its first, I don't know the word in English, but it's first LGBT strategy, you can call it. And I think this is a big step. I know strategies are boring and they are just words, but they are the beginning point for things to move forward. It is, I'm sorry, but my thoughts are not intact, because I'm so moved and actually terrified of hearing what, for example, Tina is now talking, the position you are put in just for trying to be yourself. But what could the Parliament do? Yes, of course. Everybody, many people are frustrated with the Parliament not doing anything more to those countries where the progress is going backwards.
Should there be any sanctions, for example?
Yes, exactly. But the Parliament of the European Union can't touch things that aren't the European Union's power to touch. So actually, the only thing we can touch is the budget. As boring as it sounds, but we cannot go into a country and say that your media is not working correctly, or we can only touch those things that member states has given the European Union the power to have power in. So the rule of law and the rule of law mechanism that the member states now in some way agreed on is a very good step and a very important step. It led to the fact that 6 Polish cities that had asked for funding from the European Union were denied that funding, because Ursula von der Leyen, the chair of the Commission, said very well that the basic for all treaties of the European Union states that European Union is for all Europeans, not whether their sex, their gender, their sexual orientation, anything. And because these areas and cities had said that they are LGBT-free zones, then we cannot give money somewhere where it doesn't go to all Europeans. So yes, you can do. And I think that there are small steps in that way. And for all of you friends who are struggling, I do believe that progress is inevitable. But it of course means that the society has to be free, the press has to be free, the media has to be free, the education has to be free, the science has to be free, the elections has to be free. So I know that you have a lot of work, and I know that your struggle is huge, but I do want to say to you that please have confidence in that things will go for the better, and just keep up the struggle. I remember when I was young and I was thinking that we just have to keep up the struggle until we get our rights. And then I understood that it's never ready. It's never ready, even in Finland, where things are quite good at this moment. It's still not ready. We have to work for it every single day. So please hold on, and please, I hope you have the courage to go on. I do not know if I would have the courage you have, and I respect you so much.
Thank you, Silvia. And that is a good time to ask from Yuri, like, as activists, how do you take care of your own well-being? Do you find it sometimes exhausting to be defending your rights all the time, everywhere, or is it more empowering? Or how do you take care of yourself?
Thank you, Elena. I do believe it's a very good question to highlight, because the issue of, in the same time, burnout is urgent for LGBTQI defenders or other human rights defenders, because by working longitudinal on the same issues for years and not seeing sometimes the visible changes or the outcomes of your work can be really damaging for your own well-being. So what I find inspiring is that me facing, when I was like younger and facing ageism and discrimination based on my sexual orientation, and been living in fear in Ukraine of fearing to come out to this society and be who I am, and now seeing the new generation of like very young schoolers of 14, 15 years old already coming out, accepting themselves, finding support, living freely their life, maybe still facing, not maybe, but for sure facing lots of obstacles in our countries of Council of Europe, which is still tough. But for me, it's inspiring to see that all work we've been doing together as human rights activists for these years, it has some results. At least when I see the young community members living freely their life, it's already supporting me a lot. What I want to highlight additionally is that it's also a pressure, it's also a burden to feel that community puts lots of responsibility on you because you're on the forefront, and like you need to be 24/7 there to protect every and each of us. But of course it's hard. So what I do at the moment, I am in the nature, it's my vacation, so I'm taking a week-long vacation from all the businesses and my activism. But at the same time, this event was really important, and for me it's also part of my well-being to share the stories with the fellow activists who are doing a great work, and for me it's the like inspiration moment as well. So that's what I would add.
Thank you so much. That was inspiring as well. Please take care of yourself. We got some one question from the audience. Just a moment. Maybe Aili could answer this at least first. It is, what about the social services for LGBTQ people who experience domestic violence? Subject often taboo, and lack of services is discrimination. Do you find this problematic in your country or in your situation? Do you meet people who have been experiencing or are currently experiencing violence, and do you have any services for them?
It's a difficult subject to address to. Maybe we can first see it as a broader problem, that a lot of community members, especially minors and young people who depend on their families and parents financially, they at first, when they feel themselves threatened, they need to hide their identities. It has its effect on their current life and also the future. And if a person chooses to be open in their families about their identities, of course, there is a chance that they can experience domestic violence. So first, I will say that Estonia doesn't have any specific LGBT plus social services. It is it's a broader service, but I'm afraid that a lot of community members don't get that far to get this kind of service. So it's a broader issue. And for example, our association is doing as much as we can to inform and train our officials and the departments who deal with social services. So I hope that the help is there when it's needed, but I'm afraid that in a lot of cases it goes unknown, because people themselves don't want to be seen vulnerable, weak, so they try to deal with by themselves with this issue.
Can it be something as well, like, I'm just guessing that because LGBTIQ relationships can be sort of taboo as well, and then you have to defend your relationship, and when you have problems in your relationship, it's harder to seek for help.
I'm sure that it is that way. I see it as living in a constant crisis or post-traumatic distress. You have stress from every side of and aspect of your life. So of course it's one of the main things and aspects why the help doesn't go where it's needed.
Thank you, Aili. Would you like Tina to tell something about your situation in Hungary about this domestic violence issue?
Yes, I would like to just make a general comment, because I think it's important to highlight when there are no proper social services for people who experience domestic violence in general, then how can we talk about how and whether LGBTQ people can access the services, which are basically non-existent and non-functioning, and that's the situation in Hungary. So I mean, in certain contexts, it's even impossible to address the situation because like in general, the population is not served. So this is just something that I wanted to highlight, that often it is the case in countries and also in Hungary. And thank you.
Oh, that is so sad to hear. And there's so many other obstacles when you live in LGBTIQ relationship, because you get so many precharges, and then it's harder to seek any kind of support, I think. Now we have still time for our final question that I would love every one of you to ask. Like, please, could you give us any recommendations for if you are an activist or to media or decision maker? What could we do to support the rights of LGBTIQ people better? Please give us good recommendations. Nitin, can you start?
Thank you for putting me on the spot.
Sorry.
No problem. So concretely, what I was thinking when we're talking about the EU institutions, As for the decision makers and what can be done, I think one of the most important legal instruments that the EU can do right now is to adopt the horizontal anti-discrimination directive. That's been 10 years on the table, which would mean that, because right now at the EU level, discrimination based on sexual orientation is only protected in employment. So the horizontal directive would actually expand the different domains to social services and stuff like that. So that's one of the things, like, it's been 10 years in the decision makers in decision making, but still it hasn't been adopted. And I think that tells quite a lot about the situation as well, like 10 years and we're still waiting for the EU to do that. And secondly, just a general remark on recommendation and what I would say to especially to allies, and this sounds very basic, but I think listening and acting, listening to us, what we are saying, and acting not on our behalf, but using your privilege to using your voice, because the fact is marginalized people, LGBTQI people need allies, but sometimes the allies also don't. You might advocate rights actually without taking the corporation what we are saying and doing actually more harm than actually benefits. So I think listening is the key, and also not dwelling on, like, when we're talking on privilege, not always like, oh, I'm so privileged and feeling guilty. Use that guiltiness or whatever emotions you're feeling into action as well. So these are my short recommendations.
They were great recommendations for everyone, I think. Who would like to be next? Yes, please, Silvia.
Thank you, Elina. Well, I'm Nitin, one of those you have spoken so well about intersectionality and stuff. I am one of those who feels guilty at the moment for my privileges. And it's so right, the guilt has to be action. The feeling doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help anything, me feeling sorry for somebody else. It needs action. What I want to say from my privileged point of view is keep up the work. And remember, it's going to be a long, long struggle. In Finland, the first legislative proposal for an equal marriage law was made in 1993. It took until the year 2017 until we got the law. It took so many years and rounds of discussions before it was finally passed with a very small majority, but still. We've had pride in Finland and Helsinki since the year 2000. Before that, we had something that was called Liberation Days. And my first Liberation Day was somewhere in the mid-90s. There were 30 of us. We were standing in a street corner and people were spitting on us, and it was the threat of physical violence was present. And now we have a Pride March with 100,000 people. Because this is what I always say, a minority in itself cannot improve its situation because it's a minority. We need the support of the majority. And that's something we have to think in everything, how we act and how we speak and how we search and connect with allies. And in that work, we should try to learn from each other, of course, support each other in the struggle, but also learn the best practices, ask for help, give help, and to give each other the feeling that you're not alone, and use each other, and show that there are so many of us, and believe in that it will one day be better.
Thank you so much. And this is quite inspiring story still, that things can change, and they will change when we change them. And we will have allies, we will have better world when we do it together. Was Aili the next one who could share some recommendations?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, following those inspiring words, I can maybe take it to the level of information and disinformation. I think that it's really important to for an activist, decision maker, or media to use only information which is science-based, and then maybe it has to be unbiased, of course. So I can start maybe a recommendation for an activist, for a survival of an activist, and everybody in the panel, I'm sure, are doing that, but maybe those people who are listening, you can't do alone anything, as previous panelists also said. You have to join forces. You have to be strategic. You have to have a plan. For example, communication, advocacy, even a crisis plan. It's important to be strategic. Always make sure that information you use is science-based and accurate, and gather that information and manage it accordingly, and assess the impact, the important impact, and through that customize the plans. But the decision makers and media, actually, it's important to listen activists by considering them as the experts of the field and the topic. Their input and suggestions are really inputs from the community, and the suggestions are their professional estimation, how to improve the legislation and development plans, etc. Media, of course, should really think through their goals when covering LGBT plus related content, because unbiased and science-based titles, media, or a content helps to pass accurate information, and through that shape the public's attitude accordingly, and make changes to that.
Thank you, Aili. These were really good recommendations as well. And Yuri, maybe you could go next.
Thank you so much. So I support all that was mentioned by my great fellow colleagues before. And I just want to emphasize and highlight again that it's so important to take this intersectional approach of all the work of human rights defenders, LGBTQI defenders. I think by implementing this intersectional approach, we can keep supporting different movements, not always necessarily related to LGBTQI rights, but by that we can support other movements and build efficient, sustainable, strong partnership, which will just enlarge our allies movement and support, which can benefit in such changes as we can see now in Finland, by shifting from like small, not supporting Pride to the huge international events supported by so many people. And last but not least, in this intersectional approach, I keep asking for everyone, for LGBTQI organization, other organization, keep inviting and involving youth voices in your work, because with the youth, it's our future. Let's fight the ageism we have in our movements or organizations sometimes, because all these young youth activists, people later on will be the main part of the movement, or they are now at the moment. So don't forget, please include youth in your work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yuri. And that is so important message. Also, the young people should be included. And Tina, please, you are the last one, but not least. Please tell us your recommendations.
So many things were said, and I could echo most of them. And thank you very much for these amazing recommendations. I would have a bunch of those also. I have one really practical recommendation to the European Commission to be more active in raising its voice when it comes to violations of LGBTQI rights and when it comes to violations of rule of law in member states. And I also have a recommendation for activists. Take care of yourself first. Your own mental health issues and well-being is the most important, because that's the only way to be a sustainable activist. And you should have also a life. You are not just an activist, so take care of yourself in each and every circumstance. And to decision makers and media, I would say that stop polarizing, stop like painting pictures that we are two camps of people living on Earth and fighting each other. We should stop this. We should talk to each other. We should talk to those who fight for rights, and we should also talk to those who are opposing those rights. And we have to try to come some common ground, because I'm pretty sure there are. We just keep on fighting, like camping down and fighting these wars, when we could just probably maybe talk to each other and find ways moving forward. I wouldn't be an activist if I wouldn't believe in that we can kind of achieve changes in society and in the world. So ending on this positive note, I really believe in dialogue, and we should do more of that, obviously. That's my recommendation.
Thank you, Tina. These were so great recommendations and great discussion. I'm so honored that I was part of it. And I will think about each one of you and what you said, and just remember your wisdom and take it with me. What I can now shortly say, that situation is bad in some ways, but it's also, and there's a lot of things we have to do, and we have to be strong, but there's still good things happening, and we have to do it together with other human rights organizations. We have to include young people. We have to benefit science. We have to work together. And thank you for letting me be your moderator today, and thank you for your contributions. And I think Matti will next have a few words for you.
I would also shortly like to thank you all for your contribution to the discussion, and I feel very, very moved now that I've been listening to the conversation. And we're flowing towards the end of the event. And next, I would actually like to invite Kerttu, the Secretary General of Seta, LGBTI rights in Finland, to conclude and wrap up the discussions that we have had today.
Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for being with us today. Obviously, I want to thank you all for your great interventions and what you've been sharing with us. I think I just want to sum up with few things. Obviously, we know that we're all experiencing the same hostility, the rising of hostility towards LGBTIQ people in Europe, obviously at different degrees. The opposition is loud, and at parts of Europe it is state-sponsored. There are activists and LGBTI people who have to fear for their lives in Europe, and this is a reality that we all have to be aware of. The pushback is having an impact on us, also depending on our different situations, on our socioeconomic situation, on our if we're residents or not, or citizens or not in the country, on our ability, or on our ethnic background, on our age, various different intersections. A big positive thing is the organizing of LGBTIQ movements in Europe. Even we know that in the most hostile environments, LGBTI people are coming together to support each other and to bring forth the issues that are relevant to us, and that is a huge force. They are also finding allies in other LGBTIQ organizations across the borders, across themes, but also other human rights organizations. And we also all realize that having dialogue with other human rights activists, also considering their struggles, is important for our work. We see that the hostility is also having an impact on individual activists, on our mental health. Burnouts are very frequent in our movement, And it's also about the pressure, the extent of the pressure that we're experiencing. As a movement, let's make sure we are taking all LGBTIQ people on board. And I think, for example, for a movement like the LGBTIQ movement in Finland, like organization like Seta, this is our biggest challenge for the next years, that we will be able to take all LGBTIQ people on board and make sure that no one is left behind. We also need to take care of ourselves and others. Also, this is something for us who work in the organizations to consider. How do we make sure that people are not, the burden is not too big on individuals? How can we support them? How can we make sure that one person is not trusted with too big tasks, and that we are such communities that where we can also have the time to heal. We recognize that at the European level, we have a huge amount of allies. We have a huge amount of people working for our rights, not just whether we talk about the European Parliament or parliaments on the national levels, whether we talk about other big organizations. And a huge development has happened just within the past 10 years when it comes to how LGBTIQ issues have become a part of the agendas at the European Union, at the UN, and other intergovernmental bodies. And I think this change is something that we can, at least us who have been following the movement for a bit longer, we can see that the work that we do, it does have a difference. We also recognize that there are a lot of potential supporters. There was a question issue of that with providing proper information. For example, making research, bringing out the results, we are able to win over people who are not yet our supporters, who are not yet working with us. And I think this is something that we also have to remember our future work, that we can change people's minds with information and obviously with stories. For an organization like Seta, we have to remember that we have to keep our governments accountable for obviously for the situation that we have at home, but also with what they are doing in the world. We know, for example, we're very happy that Finland, the Finnish government, is actively supporting and also financially the LGBTIQ movements globally. But we, for example, see a gap at the moment that with the hostility rising in Europe, there are no really instruments with which the Finnish government can support the European LGBTIQ movement. And if we think about countries like Hungary, Poland, and many countries in the post-Soviet area, we know that the support from the European movement is important, and that can be guaranteeing their existence when the hostility in the countries is getting too big. And I think this is something that we really need to think about and find a way that also the European governments could have an instrument with which they can better support also the work that is being done in Europe. I think these are some of the points. I cannot say anything better than all you have said, because you have contributed with so many wise words and observations. But I hope that this event is one of the ways that we can also contribute in providing those links, like other privileged LGBTI organizations which are receiving public funding, like Seta, we have the possibility of making the links between the MEPs, Finnish MEPs, with the Finnish government and activists, and this is something that we hope to be able to do also in the future. To make those links that your voices will be heard, and that you will have the possibility to bring forth your views and be heard. Thank you so much all for participating in this, and I hope that we will be seeing each other in the future.
Thank you, Kerttu. Maybe I can have one more thing to say. It